Today we're gonna go over the 4 different types of deadlifts: conventional, sumo, RDL, and trap bar deadlifts. First, the conventional. The conventional deadlift, we're gonna have our feet between our hips and our shoulders, hands will be right outside the thighs. I like to always start with about a thumb width distance. Each position will change slightly differently depending on the levers of our body, arms and our legs. As we get set up, I wanna think of bringing my body to the bar. Bar will be touching my shin or close to my shin, and as I get set up, I'm gonna lower my body. I wanna have my shoulders above my hips above my knees, and I'll have a slight little triangle angle when you look from the side. As I get set up, I want to think of pulling my shoulder blades back to the bar. This is going to allow me to keep the bar close to my body. From there, I want to take a nice big breath, brace my midline, and then I'm going to press away from the floor. So I want to think of pushing the earth away from me with my legs. And as I stand, my hips and shoulders are going to rise together at the same time, pulling my knees back out of the way. We really want to focus on keeping the bar path as straight as possible here. Once I reach my knees, I'm then going to extend into my hip, bringing the bar to that top locked out position, shoulders stacked over hips and ankles stacked over each other in a nice straight line. On the return, I'm gonna push my butt back, bar's gonna slide down my thighs. Once I reach my knees, I'm then going to bend in my knee joint, lower the bar to the floor. Really gonna focus on the core strength. This is gonna require a little bit of flexibility in the hamstrings, but it's also gonna strengthen our back, our spinal erectors, and our hamstrings with the conventional deadlift. You can do a double overhand grip. That will also tax a little bit of the grip and forearm to build endurance of the forearm, or you could do an alternate grip. One palm facing forward, one palm facing you. If you always rotate your left arm forward, I recommend switching and changing it so your right arm faces forward at times. If you get to heavier loads, that alternate grip style will allow you to hold onto the bar a little bit longer. For the sumo deadlift high pull, we're going to change a few things, specifically our stance and our hand position. The sumo deadlift is going to incorporate a little more strength building for our hips and our glutes, as well as our core. So for my stance position, I'm going to bring my feet outside my shoulders. I'm going to turn my toes out slightly. The one point I really want to emphasize here is as you get into the setup position, your knees are going to need to still track over the toes. So you want to make sure that your stance isn't too wide where your knees collapse in. So adjusting your stance will be imperative as you learn this movement. So as I get set up, my hands are going to come inside my legs, about a thumb width distance. My knees are going to be tracking out over the toes, bars close to my shin. My setup position is similar where I still have my shoulders above my hip and hip above knee. I still have that triangle, but that triangle has changed a little bit. As I go to lift, I want to brace my core, take that big breath, and pull the lats into my body so I can keep my bar close to my body and have a straight bar path. I'm pressing the earth away from me as well. Hips and shoulders rise together, and then once I pass my knees, I'm extending my hip, finishing in the top position. On the return, my butt's going to go back, bar will slide down my thigh. Once I reach my knee again, I'll then bend my knee joint and have the bar come back to the floor. Notice that I'm gonna have a little more of an upright torso here as my stance is a little bit wider. My hips are gonna be a little bit lower, but still a little bit above my knee. This is really gonna focus on training a little bit more of the glutes and the hips, and also keep a more upright position as you do the sumo deadlifts. The RDL deadlift, Romanian deadlift, is gonna change a little bit. We're gonna bring our feet back underneath our hips, hands gonna be right outside the shoulders, about a thumb guide distance away from our body. This is gonna focus a little bit more on the hamstrings and the core work, so it's gonna strengthen our back and strengthen our hamstrings. I'll provide some scaling options if getting to the floor is challenging with this movement. So as I get set up, hands are just outside the shoulders like I mentioned. I'm gonna keep my hips nice and high. I'm gonna have a slight bend of my knee. As I hinge from the hips, I wanna make sure that my back is nice and flat as I go to lift from the floor. From here, since my knee is slightly bent, I wanna maintain that position as I extend from my hip, squeezing my butt and extending to the top position. On the return, I'm gonna hinge back from my hip, slight bend in the knee, and lower the bar all the way to the floor. I wanna ensure I'm keeping my back nice and flat as I do these RDLs. If you have tight hamstrings or you need to modify or scale this, you can add plates or some boxes underneath the plates so that raises the end position or end bottom position of the sumo, of the RDL. That's gonna allow you to still train that movement with a straighter style leg, still a small bend in the knee, but allow you to modify that distance so you don't have to go as far. If your back is rounding in the RDLs, just raise that bar up so you can still train this movement, but keep that nice flat back. The final is a trap bar deadlift or deadlift with kettlebells. I'm going to be demonstrating with kettlebells here as I don't have a trap bar, but it's going to mimic the same motion and same movement pattern as a trap bar. Doing a deadlift with kettlebells or trap bar can be a little bit less stress on the back and can actually allow individuals with any back injuries or back issues to do some deadlifts. The reason for this is it changes the setup position where you don't have to navigate around the bar. It's a little less technical and a little easier to learn. For the trap bar deadlift or deadlift with the kettlebells, your feet are going to be a little bit closer directly underneath or inside your hips as you're having to navigate the weight on the outside. From there, if I'm grabbing with my kettlebells, I'm going to grab towards the front of the kettlebell, close to that corner, so as I lift that kettlebell, the weight kind of pulls back. I want to be bending at my knees and at my hips. I'm going to have a little more of an upright torso, and this is going to include a little more musculature or include more use of the musculature of our quads. I still want to press away from the floor, having my body raised at the same time, but I don't have to worry about my knee position relative to the bar as there is no bar. So I extend all the way up to the top, I finish the top position, I squeeze my butt. On the return, I'm going to hinge from my hips slightly, then start to bend the knees, and I'll bring the kettlebells close to the body. If you are using kettlebells, you have to make sure that your feet are relatively close to one another so you don't land the kettlebell on the toe. If you're using a trap bar, you can have a little bit wider stance with your feet, but still keep them directly underneath your hips, as that's going to allow you to have a good power position. That also will transfer to other movements that you might be doing, such as broad jumps or box jumps, which we look at economy of training. So again, if you're doing the deadlift with a trap bar or kettlebell, you're going to be a little bit closer. The other option is to do them with dumbbells, where one dumbbell head would just touch the floor. But again, you have a narrower stance, and you can use a little more musculature of the quads when you do deadlift with these movements.